Good morning. My name's Retro Pat. How are we doing today, fellas? Good morning to you. 2023 was probably one of my best years yet in terms of gaming, going back and replaying classics for the first time. I'm going to be talking about today the best games that I played within 2023. These are games that I played for the very first time within 2023, and I played all of them until completion, except for around one game, and we'll talk about that when I get to it. All right, and our first game on that list today is going to be Tiny Tank. This is also the only game on this list that I haven't beaten to completion, so keep that in mind. This is considered by many to be a hidden gem on the PS1, overused term, but I think a lot of people do use that term correctly on this game. It's a really fun, wacky, vehicular combat storyline game. Very unique, very interesting character in the boy Tiny Tank. It has some interesting commentary I think a lot of people will enjoy as well. And you just sort of operate this tank with pretty smooth control scheme, I would argue, for like PS1 vehicles. One of the most awkward things, I guess, is getting your thing to aim correctly, or even understanding what the game wants you to do at some points. It's a well-guided storyline for the most part, but there are a couple things that I'd recommend Googling to figure out once you get stuck on levels. This is one of those games that if you played it as a kid, I could see you getting stuck on certain levels and just never beating the game because of that. So I would like to complete this game here coming up in 2024. I've really enjoyed my experience with Tiny Tank. This actually came as a recommendation from my girlfriend. She was lucky enough to be able to play this game growing up. It was on a demo disc for her, and she never forgot it. One of those games that you play on a demo disc that I'm sure we've all had that experience that you just never forget, and eventually you can go back and play the full game. Next up is a game that I'm embarrassed to say that I never played until the year 2023. It's going to be Crash Team Racing. By far the best kart racer I've ever played. I'm sorry, move over Mario Kart 64, which was my previous favorite kart racer. Crash Team Racing took the cake, man. Zero nostalgia for this game. Never played it until 2023 as an adult at 24, 25 years old now. I grew up playing the Crash Bandicoot series. I played Crash Bandicoot 1, I played Crash Bandicoot 2, I played Crash Bandicoot 3. I even played The Huge Adventure on GBA, and I've now played Crash Purple. I enjoyed Crash Purple on GBA as a kid. Like, how did I not play CTR? I played Crash Bash. I loved Crash growing up. Never played CTR. And it just feels incredible. I think the storyline, like hub worlds, are interesting, a little unclear. I had got stuck in them a couple times. Maybe I'm just a noob. But man, I love the feeling of racing in CTR. It's bar none. It's phenomenal. It's unbelievable. Picked it up for $15 at a local game bookstore. Just happened to have it. And man, the little turbo boosts, the slides, the AI, the difficulty of the races, the difficulty gets really extreme, in my opinion, later on. I feel like I was really like cranking turns perfectly, fighting off AI, like really hitting these perfect little turbo boosts, and I would still lose. Like the last 2 to 3 maps where I must have replayed hundreds of times. They got really, really, really hard, but it was a enjoyable thing. That almost was a little too hard, but I think it was just right. Man, CTR was it's a phenomenal game. S tier, best kart racer I've ever played. Best game of a genre. You can't be better than that. If you haven't played CTR, what are you doing? Go pick up a copy, go play it, go emulate it right now. Next up is 2 different games in one slot, and it's going to be tough. I'm going to talk about both of them for a while. First up is Rage 1. Now, I played Rage 1 growing up, but I never finished it. I finally went back and finished Rage 1 for the first time. Just a fantastic game that had expectations that were not right for the era. I'd argue kind of similarly to, I've actually been playing Lucius recently, a really fun point-and-click adventure game, but also had expectations. I'll do a whole video on that coming up. Don't worry, Lucius is getting its own video. A game that was ravaged in reviews due to expectation. People wanted Rage to be this huge open-world game with dialogue choices and different weapons, and I wanted that too at that time with Skyrim, Fallout New Vegas, all those games at the time, Borderlands, like coming out and giving that inspiration. People wanted a mix between Skyrim and Borderlands, and I think they ended up getting something more like Doom and I don't even know what else. Doom and Fallout maybe, but take away a lot of the RPG elements. It's not really much an RPG. Rage was expected to be more RPG-like, but it was more adventure, exploration, storyline, exploring this world, exploring these new creatures, exploring this new habitat, and learning everything and having some fun with the combat. The biggest downfall of Rage 1 is definitely the combat. I think the combat was pretty clunky for what they were trying for. There was some really unique stuff. Rage did a lot of unique things with the the scope. The way they did the scope on the pistol was really interesting. If you know what I'm talking about, you would like hollow out a little thing, and it was very, very cool. Rage 1 was a great game, underrated, very experimental. And then here comes Rage 2, which you can see on in the background behind me. Dude, I do get why people don't like this game, or I do get why reviewers don't like Rage 2. It reviewed like fine. Rage 2 is the most average game. If you ask most people, they'll say it's most average game. Rage 2 doesn't have much of a storyline. Storyline, very shallow. Main character, it's not The Witcher. You know, don't come to Rage 2 looking for The Witcher. If you want, I can confidently say this, because this is one of the best games I've ever played. Spoiler alert. Like, this snuck into my top 10 favorite games, I think, of all time after playing it, which sounds ridiculous. If you want the best FPS combat experience that I've ever played, and I played a lot of FPS, I played a lot of combat, a lot of games, right? Best FPS combat I've ever seen. Best fluidity, most abilities, movement. If you want movement in a shooter, if you want skill, mechanics, man, dude. Jeez, it gets me so hyped up. Rage 2 is phenomenal. You have to play. If you care about mechanics, if you care about speed, like, this is a game, it's kind of hilarious. Rage 2 would have been a fantastic multiplayer game. You see so many games add multiplayer that wouldn't need it. Now, would it have been a balanced experience? Probably not. But man, god damn, would it have been chaotic? Would it have been like this almost reminds me of like an arena shooter in terms of like the speed and high-paced turns and mechanics and stuff like that. Now you have a lot of other things. It's not really like that. So there's abilities, there's more ADS, there's a lot more stuff going on. It's not gameplay wise comparable to an arena shooter, but in terms of the way the multiplayer probably would have played out, I would argue. God damn, Rage 2, I can't hype it up enough. I can't recommend it enough. I got the collector's edition back here, and I'm so glad I did. It just became one of my favorite games of all time. There's 2 games that I played in the year 2023 that snuck into like my top 10 game list of all time, and I'm thrilled to be able to say that, and Rage 2 is one of them. All right, after being hyped up from Rage 2, you thought I would cool down, but no, I'm jumping into the next game that jumped into my top 10 list of all time. Kingdoms of Amular Reckoning. Now, if you like RPGs, if you like open world, Diablo-style combat, hack and slashy, but almost with some like Dark Souls elements of parrying thrown in, very cool. Once again, it's probably similar to Rage 2, shallow storyline, okay? The storyline, I thought it was kind of interesting. People online call it shallow, and I see where they're coming from. Similar to Rage 2. The Rage 2 storyline's just a vehicle to move the combat and the systems. Kingdoms of Amular Reckoning, kind of similar. The storyline's not the most interesting, but what is interesting is the factions and the lore and the characters and the combat. This has what I would argue to be the best, like, I don't know if it's quite isometric, but the best like third person isometric. I'm sure game devs have a better word for this than what I'm saying. I'm a player, you know, not a creator. Well, in terms of video games, creator in terms of video, whatever. Kingdoms of Amular Reckoning, man. Game is fucking phenomenal. Game is fantastic. I played this, and then I went to play Diablo 3, which is obviously, you know, Diablo 3 Blizzard, AAA, huge title. And I was like, dude, what a letdown. Like, playing this first and then going to Diablo, holy shit. Now, I still like Diablo 3. We'll talk about it. It's actually on this list. We'll talk about that in a sec. But, man, Kingdoms of Amular, the beauty of the world, it was like, it's almost like, and the best comparison, I'm going to be really blunt and simple. It's just easy to draw these comparisons. Skyrim plus Diablo. Best comparison, best way to explain it. From the gear, the farming, the RPG elements, the fighting, the world, the lore, the characters, there's a lot of decisions you can make. The decisions, I don't know if they really matter. Some of them really do. I want to play this again. I also really want to play Tip. I think, I could be wrong, I'm pretty sure it's worth it and better to get the Re-Reckoning edition on Xbox One and PS4, I believe. I think it's a lot more expensive. This is like $5, and the Re-Reckoning's like 20 to 40, I think, unfortunately. I really want to get the Re-Reckoning edition, which is essentially the remake on a later generation. The reason being is because the biggest fault of this game, and what I'm pissed off about, is that you cannot, there's no like end game. Like, once you beat the storyline, once you beat all the quests and the storylines and stuff, I wanted to do all the side quests. I really wanted to. This is man, I love this game. I'd love to like 100% complete it at some point. But what happens is the mobs don't scale with you. It's like how do I compare this? It's like World of Warcraft leveling in terms of zones and enemies, and not like Skyrim. In Skyrim, every single creature in the world scales with you to some extent. So if you're level 50, undead draugrs might be like level 40 or whatever, versus like if you're level 10, they might be level 8, something like that, right? Kingdoms of Amular Reckoning is like, if you're level 50 and you go to like a beginning zone, they're level 2 still, and you can just like one-shot them, and it's like it creates for not a very interesting. I actually prefer the level scaling of Skyrim. Some people call that stale, and it makes you feel like you don't gain any power over time. I disagree. I actually like that sort of scaling because it makes the game infinitely playable, infinitely grindable, which is what I think Re-Reckoning kind of adds to it. There's so many different builds. There's a really good skill tree in this that I explored. Man, I want to play Kingdoms of Amular Reckoning just over and over and over again. This is a game that I think I dumped like 50 to 80 hours into in like a week, which was really, I did the same with like Rage 2. Rage 2 I just dumped so much time into so quickly. That's a lot of time for me nowadays because I just work so much. I make so many videos. Not on the, obviously this is not my main, this channel is not my main thing. I have a main channel called Petrowski where I make Pokemon guide content and cover a game called Pokemon, which I love very much. This is my side project, my passion project. So if you're watching me and you don't know Petrowski, that's really cool. I appreciate you watching. That's kind of a miracle to me. But man, I love this game. If you haven't played Kingdoms of Amular Reckoning, if you're like skeptical about it, man, just pick it up for $5. Pick it up for the $5 on 360. It's super, super cheap. It's so goddamn good. It tanked the developer company and put them out of business, which is crazy to me because I love this game. May not be for everybody, may not be for you. If you're looking for like hard, rich, beautiful storyline games, a lot of the recommendations are not going to be that. These are, I like games that you can grind for hundreds of hours and enjoy the gameplay loop. And that's what Kingdoms of Amular Reckoning is. That's what Rage 2 is. Let's finally move on. It's funny that I just kind of shit-talked this game, but now we have to talk about it. Diablo 3. I think Diablo 3 deserves a mention just due to it having probably the best difficulty system I've ever seen in a video game. Now, maybe Diablo wasn't the first game to do this. Maybe they did it in previous Diablo games. I touched a little bit of Diablo 2 as well this year, but couldn't get sucked into it very well. But I'll get back to it, I promise, okay? Diablo 3. The best part, in my opinion, the difficulty tiers is I've never seen a game reward you like Diablo does for playing higher difficulties. Usually the reward for playing higher difficulties is like achievements for completing certain maps or certain levels or the game on those higher difficulties. In Diablo 3, if you play at higher difficulties, and there's like 8 tiers of difficulties, which is phenomenal. There's like easy, normal, hard, and there's like nightmare 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or whatever the heck, right? Man, if you play at those higher difficulties, it really encourages you. You get more XP and more gold per creature, and it tells you, hey, if you play at this difficulty, you'll get 175% more gold and XP. And I'm sitting there like, oh shit, dude, like I want to. That encourages you to try to play at the highest difficulty possible that you can like stay alive on to try to get those maximum gains. It is so fun. You can also switch between the difficulties somewhat freely. Man, I really, really liked that. Like that system alone put it up in my top thing. 2023 was the first year I ever played a Diablo game, which is hilarious. I've played Path of Exile. I grew up playing Fate, which is a kind of a Diablo ripoff, but with more cartoonish, kid-friendly graphics, which I loved. It's almost like, imagine Diablo with like World of Warcraft graphics. I really, really love Fate. It's a great game series, but Diablo was pretty solid. The boss fights were fun and memorable. I got stuck on certain things, learning the mechanics. It's a solid experience. I would argue the combat is just worse than Kingdoms of Amular Reckoning, unfortunately, but it does a lot of things right as well, and it's a solid game, enough to end up on this list. Probably the weakest listing on this list, but still, Diablo 3, definitely worth playing, definitely worth picking up. If you haven't played it, it's a solid Diablo game. Next up is Asuras Wrath. This game was like a legend to me for a long time. I saw this fight scene on YouTube back in like 2011, 2012, something of that sort, and I was just deathly curious of what game this was from, what this was from. It just looked incredible, and it is incredible, and I finally was able to play it in the year 2023. I hunted it down. I figured out it was called Asuras Wrath, one of the more exclusive / hard to find Xbox 360 games, and for a solid reason. It's a really, really unique experience. One of those games you also have to understand what is the type of experience before you jump into it. Asuras Wrath is at its core an anime as a video game. That's what it is. It's a storyline, like manga. You're like reading and like playing through like a little bit. It's like it's got some like combat. It's like an anime fighting game. But like the fighting and the combat is like, in my opinion, I actually really liked the combat. I think the combat was better than it needed to be worth playing the game. But mostly, I said that you wouldn't find many story-rich games on this list, but Asuras Wrath is definitely the one. Incredible story, incredible characters, incredible voice acting. Man, some of the best in games. God damn. Asuras Wrath is phenomenal. I would love to get a Japanese copy and play it on PS3 as well to see the sub versus dub. A lot of arguments with sub versus dub and anything. I think it really just comes down to the scene, to the game, to the anime. Sub, or I know it's a hot take, sub or dub can be better depending on, it just depends nowadays. Wasn't the case like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, but as voice acting has developed, as budgets have increased for these types of ventures in the US, I would say the argument for sub versus dub comes down to a scene dependent argument at this point. But that's a whole other video. I could do a whole video talking about that if you guys prefer like anime stuff or like sub versus dub discussion. I have the whole boomer history with it. All right, Asuras Wrath, just a one of a kind experience. You'll never see anything like it in any other game. It's a storytelling masterpiece about rage, about anger. If you are a frustrated young male and you want to get out some of those frustrations, play Asuras Wrath. Don't do anything crazy. Go play Asuras Wrath instead. Have fun. I don't know. Maybe this is like the Baki inspiration that everybody needs to become like Sam Solik. I don't know how good that reference will last in 5 years from this video, but Asuras Wrath is incredible. Just a great game. Just super worth playing. Super fantastic. Can't recommend it enough. But know what you're getting into. It's not for everybody. It's going to be a storyline manga anime type experience. You are playing the main character. Keep that in mind before you jump into it. It may not be for everybody. It is not as much gameplay as there is story. There's very little gameplay in this game, so keep that in mind. It's an experience rather than a game. All right, next up is Gears of War 1 and Gears of War 2. Now, I played Gears of War 1, the original copy, on 360 growing up, and it was really, I remember really liking Gears of War 1 as a kid, but I never went on to play Gears of War 2. So in 2023, I replayed the remake of Gears 1. Dude, the graphics, this is, goddamn, the definition of a beautiful remake. This thing looked gorgeous. Gorgeous looking game. Gears of War, the Ultimate Edition on Xbox One. This is also one of the best deals you can get in gaming. It's the Gears of War Ultimate Edition plus the Rare Replay Pack. This is like thousands of hours of gameplay for like $8. It's unbelievable. Probably the best deal in video games right now. Gears of War 1 remake. There's not a whole lot to say about it besides, I always thought Gears of War was kind of a little overrated growing up. I always thought of it as just another big dumb gun, big strong masculine man, you know, main character sort of game. And I went back and I replayed Gears of 1 and I felt that passion again. And I was like, I want to play Gears of War 2 right away to get back into the storyline, remember things. And then I played Gears of War 2 and I was like, dude, it's so much more than that. Gears of War 2 opens up the Gears of War universe so much. Gears of War is the series itself. I have to play Gears of War 3 still. No spoilers, please. I think I already have it spoiled, but it's a really old game. Gears of War, man, the original trilogy, I always hear fantastic things about, and for good reason. Now I get it, man. Gears of War 1 slowly and like quietly reveals the world. Gears of War 1 never talks to the audience like they're an idiot. They never say like, oh, they never like exposition dump ever. You're slowly learning about this world. You're slowly learning about this like Terrarian alien invasion species that came to the planet and what's going on behind that and like the humans involved and yada yada, right? Gears of War 2 does a bit more exposition dumping, but it's not really, but it's well done, and it's like, it's well earned. Gears of War reminds me of, like, the series reminds me of like a very long anime, something like Naruto or One Piece, where you're waiting for Naruto to like finally like unleash his nine-tailed fox form, and when he does, it's that satisfying because you've waited so long. It's long-term gratification. That's what Gears of War is, and it feels good. It's a fantastic game. It's a great game to just have a drink to, relax, and enjoy, but then it's also a great game to experience the world and story and get attached to the characters and Damn, Gears of War is great. I always thought it was overrated growing up, and then I played Gears of War 2, and no, I totally get it now. It's not overrated at all. It's a fantastic series, and I can't wait to play Gears of War 3. I've never wanted to, like, jam a series back to back to back more, or, yeah, probably, maybe more than Gears of War 1, 2, and then I want to play 3, but I haven't gotten it quite yet. It's like pretty cheap game, but I'll get it at some point, and hopefully play Gears of War 3 in 2024 and get back to you guys with that one. Next up is Borderlands 2. I actually played the entire Borderlands trilogy, not including 3, in 2023. I replayed Borderlands 1, which I played a shit ton growing up. But I also used modded weapons and stuff on Xbox Live. So I wanted to have a re-experience it without modded weapons. And I still want to go back and beat Cromarax at some point, which I grinded growing up. Borderlands 1, fantastic, great game, was fun to re-experience. I think there's some weird, I always say Borderlands has one of the strangest level curves, I would argue, in gaming. Every single time without fail in a Borderlands game, once you reach levels like 10 to 19, it's so fucking hard for whatever reason. Like, those levels are so fucking hard on every Borderlands game I've ever played. Like, on Borderlands 1, 2, and the pre-sequel, they all had that problem. Also, in Borderlands 1, one of the biggest problems, I'm like shitting on it, critiquing it. It's a great game, but it has some problems. One of the biggest problems in Borderlands 1 is that none of the quests are really optional. You've got to do them all. Like, the main quest, the side quests, you've got to do everything for the XP. Like, you are struggling for XP in Borderlands 1 if you don't do every single quest. But if you do every single quest, you'll be like at level, maybe a little bit above. You can't grind over level in Borderlands 1. You have to do every fucking quest pretty much. Borderlands 2 gives you a little more choice with that, but even that, like, it's not like Skyrim. You can't, like, pick and choose what quests you do. You have to fucking do every goddamn quest or you're gonna be fucked. Borderlands 1 was fantastic. I always loved Borderlands 1 growing up. Never played Borderlands 2. Borderlands 2 was one of the most memorable trailers with that fucking dubstep song with Claptrap dancing. That shit was a huge deal when it came out back in like 2012 or 2011 or whatever. I always loved Borderlands 1 to death. Never played Borderlands 2. Played Borderlands 2 for the first time in 2023, and I thought that there's no way it could be better because I had so much nostalgia for Borderlands 1. There's no way that Borderlands 2 would be better. Little did I know, half of Borderlands 2, maybe 60% of the game, is referencing Borderlands 1. So much of Borderlands 2 is just a reference back to Borderlands 1. So many of the areas, kind of spoiler alert, I guess, but man, Borderlands 2 was phenomenal. By far the best Borderlands game that I've played. I adored Borderlands 2. Combat felt better. It just felt better. Man, I love Borderlands 2 so very much. I played Borderlands 1 with Brick. I played Borderlands 2 with Krieg the Psycho, which was a wildly fun character. And then I played the pre-sequel as well this year with a Claptrap, because I'm a dirty cringe hipster. I know, gross. Great games. I think Borderlands, a lot of the DLCs were pretty good. I didn't play through all of them, if I recall correctly. I played the pre-sequel. The pre-sequel is definitely the weakest out of these 3 games, but it's not a bad game. It's still worth playing, in my opinion. The unique mechanics alone are pretty cool. I do think, like, the pre-sequel is pretty much just Borderlands 2, but with you're on the moon. That's literally, like, the pre-sequel is literally just Borderlands 2, but you're on the moon. 100%. They needed some excuse to make a low gravity Borderlands game, and that was it. And that's what yeah, 100%. It's still a solid game. It's a great game, and it's fun because of that. And there's some really fun, quirky little storylines and stuff and quests, but pre-sequel didn't make my list. And Borderlands 1 I've played all the way through before. Borderlands 2 definitely makes my list for one of the best games I've played in 2023. All right, back to a story-rich game, which I said there would be none of. Dantes Inferno. I'm really glad I got this edition of it as well. I think this is a, I don't even know. I think it's PAL. I'm not even sure. This is a hard to find. This is Dantes Inferno Death Edition. It is really hard to find. From what I've looked on eBay, I couldn't even find these online. I could not find another copy of this game online, but I found it at a local bookstore, the same one I got Crash Team Racing at. Man, what a game. Dantes Inferno was a very controversial game when it released, having a lot of seemingly criticism and just retellings, I guess, of religion and history, going over the Crusades. I'm not here to comment on that. It's just a goddamn good video game. It tells great stories, fantastic combat, very God of War-esque, dark themes, great bosses, great Enemy design is super interesting. One of the most disturbing games probably you'll play, or one of the most strange games for sure. A lot of creativity. They just took Dantes Inferno and they went out on a limb, and they risked it to create a creative new experience, even with like semi-similar interesting like similar combat to God of War. But it's so much of a different game, I would argue, in terms of the story and in terms of the themes. I mean, obviously God of War is kind of similar, but I don't know. I think Dantes Inferno is incredible. I've wanted to play it since like 2011, 2013, like a long time. Finally got a copy for a great price, $15 on this, and I'm just so happy. Like, Dantes Inferno was probably top 20 games of all time. One of the things that I recommend the most is, one of my favorite mechanics in Dantes Inferno is all of the damned souls. I always do a absolve run fully all the way through because I don't know. I like to give people second chances pretty much always. There's people who have done some pretty horrible things in those absolving things. You run into these damned souls, which are people in hell as you're adventuring through hell. If you don't know, Dantes Inferno is based on an epic poem, which is somewhat adventuring through the nine layers of hell, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's 7, I don't remember. 7 or 9 layers of hell to go fight death to get his girlfriend back, essentially, after he cheated on her. It's like a whole thing. So he made mistakes, he fucked up, right? And yeah, he needs to be punished for that, right? So he travels to hell to get his girlfriend, to get his girly, and fights all his way through. It's a pretty cool story. And as you adventure through hell, you run into these damned souls, like I was talking about. You can either absolve them or like punish them. You can choose, right? It's a lot of moral choices, and that impacts your skill tree, and that impacts your abilities and your levels and like your sort of morality. Which doesn't really matter, but it matters for what abilities and what kind of gameplay and style you want to play as, which I think is really cool. All of the characters, all the damned souls you run into are based off of real life people. So you can actually Google all of the names. I really, really recommend doing this. It'll give you a short synopsis, but one of the things I recommend the most when playing Dantes Inferno is Google every single person you run into. It's the most interesting part of the game, is looking into the history of these people and genuinely choosing, hey, what are my morals? Do I want to absolve this person or punish them? I think it's one, as a moral cuck, a guy who loves that shit. It's so fun to go through and like really make those decisions. It's really like you can make you can make Dantes Inferno a like decision based, speaking, charisma based like choices game, which is just incredible in a God of War style, fantastic combat experience. So can't recommend Dantes Inferno enough. Just a super unique game. 10 out of 10, fucking masterpiece. Top 20 games of all time probably for me. Fantastic. All right, I know this video has been longer than I expected, but I promise you we're almost done. We've got 2 games left, so let's talk about this one. LA Noire, super cheap complete edition. I love these cheap Xbox 360 collector's editions, and it's worth getting because you get a super interesting extra mission, extra quest in the complete edition that you don't get in the original game, that talks about based on a true story where it was a rubber making lab, some sort of like scientific lab. I think they were like trying to figure out something with rubber and some sort of other metal, some sort of reaction that would have created something. It explodes. There's this huge explosion, and you have to sort of detect your way through it. So LA Noire, if you don't know, this was a game that was stuck in development hell for like 10 years or so. And it was a game where they used the newest kind of technology around facial recognition and around facial expressions. They spent so much money. It's one of the most expensive games ever made, and I think it'll always hold up because of it. A lot of people criticize it. It didn't really quite live up to the standards that people were expecting, but I think this game is a masterpiece. I think it'll never age. It'll always come back and be playable. It has really interesting, unique facial expression recognition technology that didn't hit the nail on the head, but it's pretty solid. It's about you being a detective and going around in like the 1950s, 1920s. I forget the era. I think it's 50s, 40s or 50s. And you go around and you interrogate witnesses and you investigate crimes, and it's the most realistic like detective game that I've ever played, I've ever seen, and it's so bold. It says Rockstar GamePro called it a bold cinematic step forward, a very cinematic experience, somewhat comparable to Asuras Wrath, but with a lot more gameplay in LA Noire. Just a fantastic game. There are some pretty brutal deaths, some pretty brutal mysteries to uncover, so I guess little disclaimer, little warning, some of the missions are tough to get through. There's some tough stuff in Hollywood and just some brutal so you meet a lot of great characters, and you get to control a pretty interesting character. You don't learn too much about it until later in the game, but Coleman, I believe, I haven't played this in a while, but earlier in 2023. LA Noire is fantastic. Just a great game. Everyone should play this. This is a game, like, LA Noire is one of those video games as well that I recommend probably everybody play. You don't have to finish the game, but I think everybody should play. LA Noire, Portal 1, Portal 2, these are types of games, maybe Half-Life 2. These are games that I feel like every person, every human should play, not even just like a gamer. I don't care if you play video games, you can play LA Noire and you'll enjoy it. The final game on this list, one of my favorite games I played in the year 2023, is going to be Brothers in Arms, Hell's Highway. This game sent me on a binge into Xbox 360 era shooters, and it sent me on a binge into military style shooters. That's how good it was, and no other game afterwards was as good as Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway. This game tells a eerily realistic tale regarding World War II, its effects on veterans, and also some really fucking fun gameplay where you get to act as just another infantryman. I did a whole video talking about Brothers in Arms that I really recommend checking out. That's playing in the background here. I picked up the collector's edition on a whim, and I'm so glad I did. Dude, it was like $15. It was a great deal. And it's so good about making you feel like just another infantryman. You're not the main character in Brothers in Arms, and that can be refreshing at times. That can be refreshing. It allowed you to control your units. It had a control unit type system, like a lot of certain games will try to do, similar to like an RTS, I guess, like a first-person RTS. But it really made that the main focus, as opposed to like if you don't use that system and you just try to like run and gun, you're gonna have a really hard time. It may not even be possible. You probably can, but I wouldn't be possible for me, the average player, right? Dude. The system in that game, like if you're basing a game around that system, it better be damn good, and it's damn good. The ability to like suppress your enemy's fire. If you want a strategic FPS game where you can specifically say, hey men, like suppress this guy's fire, I'm gonna take a flank around this other path. Sit there, relax, let your teammates reload their muskets and shit or whatever the fuck, right? I guess they're whatever, right? Not the right weapon, but you know what I'm saying. Not a weapon expert. Sit there, wait for the reload. Okay, men, like fire again, suppress their fire. You go on the flank, you pull out like an SMG and like, you know, spray down like the other wall. Dude, it's such a strategic, enjoyable, satisfying. It's such a satisfying FPS. And when you beat those levels, when you successfully pull off those flanks, it feels really good, and it's a fantastic, great story, great characters. The one mistake I did was I played this game without playing the previous ones, and the storyline is like this overarching thing, and you really should play the other Brothers in Arms before playing Hell's Highway, which I'm an idiot, I didn't know. I made that mistake. It's like playing Modern Warfare 3 without playing Modern Warfare 1 and 2. You've got to play the trilogy. So I really recommend checking out the other Brothers in Arms games. This one was incredible, and it just swept under the radar for a lot of people. A huge joke in my video was like that I was too busy playing Call of Duty to care about Brothers in Arms. A lot of us were at that time period, you know. That was the big thing. So don't sleep on Brothers in Arms anymore. We're too old for that. It's time to go back and replay the classics, replay the games that got swept under the rug, unrightfully so. All right, but that's all of my favorite games I played in 2023. If you guys made it to this point, firstly, thank you so much. That's amazing to me. I really appreciate it. Hopefully this was some interesting, entertaining background content while you guys played your other games, the games that you're enjoying in 2023. Leave a list, dude, comments down below. Let me know what was your like recommendations. I think recommendations are probably one of the best ways to find out about truly great games. Reviews and like top 10, like stuff like online, like doesn't always hit, but with YouTube algorithm, I'm able to attract people who have similar video game tastes to me, usually a little bit, right? And you guys may be able to just intuitively understand what kind of games I may enjoy, and I want recommendations. I'm happy to hear recommendations from you guys. So top 5 list, top 10 list, top 100 list. Let me know your favorite games that you played in 2023. And I would love to try to check them out. I might even do a poll in the future saying, hey, like what game should I play in my collection and what should I do a video on upcoming? If you're interested in that, make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it and it was entertaining background content to you. Dislike if not, that's totally okay. Subscribe to the channel for daily videos. That might change. I might do bi-daily here. This might not even be true anymore by the time this comes out. We'll have to see what happens. Busy schedule coming up with the holidays and with the double events coming up in Pokemon. If you're familiar with my main channel, is going to be wild. Play Pokemon, it's a great game. Play Dungeon Defenders, it's a great game. Play great games, have fun, enjoy life. Don't let people distract you from the real purpose of life, which is usually enjoying yourself and having fun. Life's short, have fun, enjoy yourself. As long as you're taking care of yourself, as long as you're doing your hygiene, as long as you're making enough money to pay rent, as long as you're not neglecting people in your personal life, as long as you're okay, as long as all your bases are covered, play games guilt-free. Enjoy games, experience video games. There's nothing wrong with that. Have fun. Have a great day. I'll see you guys later. Peace, Reno.